Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. And I haven't posted a video in 2 months, but I'm back. I'm back. I haven't posted in a while for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was finishing off my degree and I just decided that I didn't want to post during that time. I didn't want to worry myself with this as well as finishing my exams and everything because I was pretty stressed with it being my final year and everything. So yeah, I was finishing off my degree, I moved back home, and also I have been on the job hunt for the last month and a half. So basically, I've been really busy with all of that and I just decided not to worry about booktube. I was like, you know what? No, I'm taking a break and I haven't really been watching it. I think I just started watching booktube again like a week ago. So I'm very far behind on lots of people's videos. And if you haven't seen me in the comments, that's why I just decided that I was gonna take a break. I've watched a few people, but pretty much I've been off booktube for like the last 2 months because I was like, I am overwhelmed. So yeah, I took a break from booktube. I really felt more like that I had an obligation to make videos rather than actually wanting to make videos. So I just decided to take a break, rest, reflect. I've been doing this for 7 years. So yeah, it's been a long time of me doing this. And I just decided to take a break. I had a second where I really didn't feel like doing it at all and I thought that I had just like fallen out of love with it and so that maybe it was time to stop. But no, after a 2-month break, I'm refreshed and I'm ready to do this again. Although we're starting off with a video that I've been putting off filming the most, and that's my May and June wrap up. And it's only because it's going to take me such a long time to film. But anyway, that's what we're doing today. I'm going to be chatting about all of the books that I read in May and June, and I read a ton. I've been reading a lot, even though I haven't been posting. I read 9 books in May and 7 books in June, so I have 16 books to talk about today. It's going to take me a minute, so go grab yourself a drink and a snack, and let's just chat about some books. So in May, I took part in 2 readathons, which were the May the Force read with you and the Asian readathon. I am going to link my May TBR up in the card because I have like information for those readathons in the description of that video. You can also watch that and see what books we're supposed to complete, what challenges. I didn't actually end up sticking with my TBR that much, but it will give you a bit of an idea and then I don't have to go through every single challenge in this video because that's just gonna be way too long and nobody wants that. So we're just gonna talk about the books, not the challenges. If you want to know about them, check out the TBR. I have really chosen the wrong week to come back to booktube. We're currently having a heat wave in the UK and it's like 30 degrees in this room right now and I am sweating. It's fine. Everything's fine. Anyway, so the first 2 books that I read in May were the first 2 books in a trilogy, and those were Legend and Prodigy by Marie Lu. This series follows our 2 main characters, June and Day, and it's a Les Mis retelling. I haven't watched Les Mis, I haven't read Les Mis, so I'm not the person to talk about how this relates to Les Mis, but it just said it on the cover that it's a Les Mis retelling. Anyway, but basically June is living a pretty good life. She's got money, she is living in like a good safe area. She's part of the army, I think. And Day, meanwhile, is part of like the resistance. He's living in poverty. He's like one of the most wanted criminals and he's wanted for killing June's older brother. So June is given the task of hunting Day down and bringing him in, but then their paths cross. They don't initially know the identity of the other one, and so then they also kind of have a relationship that forms. That is like the very basic plot. I'm gonna link the Goodreads page for this series down below because honestly I don't remember that much, and I did read the second book as well, so I'm always a bit wary of going into detail in case I spoil something because I can't really remember what happened in the first book and what happened in the second book because I did read them back to back. I ended up giving both these books a 3 out of 5 stars. These books came out a long time ago. I think it was like 2011 or 12, and they're young adult dystopian, which dystopian is not really my vibe anymore. I know that my like favorite trilogy of all time, The Arc of a Scythe, is technically dystopian kind of, but dystopian is not really like my favorite thing. I do love The Hunger Games still, but I do like dystopian, but it's just like this was very dated and it very much reminded me of that particular time period where all YA dystopian was kind of the same. But my biggest issue with this book was that the characters were like really young. They were like 15 and it just didn't really make sense for what was going on, and it also did read quite young. I also just didn't feel super attached to the characters, which is like my biggest issue because I am very much a character-driven reader. But they were really fun and really fast-paced, and I think they would make a great like movie or TV show. But yeah, I enjoyed them, but I didn't enjoy them enough to read the final book. And also I read a few reviews which said that the final book was kind of a similar sort of thing because the first 2 books felt very similar. Like I think a lot of the same sort of plot points happened, but just kind of in a different way. And apparently the 3rd book was very similar as well, so I decided not to pick it up. But they were fun. If you haven't read it, maybe give it a go, but you know, I wouldn't highly recommend it or anything, but I'll definitely try something else by Marie Lu because I think that I could enjoy her stuff. But these were not the books for me. Moving on. The next book that I read was the sequel to Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and that is Tales from the Café. This is basically just more stories from the cafe. Obviously, if you don't know what Before the Coffee Gets Cold is about, it is basically a time travel book where there is this cafe in Tokyo, and if you sit in this specific seat, then you can travel back in time, but the catch is that you have to return to the present before your cup of coffee gets cold, otherwise you get stuck. So that's basically what it is. The books are basically split into like 4 kind of short stories, but there is a connection running through. But each story kind of, you follow a different pair of people who, there's the person in the present and then they're gonna go visit someone in the past. They all have sort of like quite heavy themes to them, like someone has died and they're going back to see them before they died and things like that. And when I read the first one, I didn't realize that that's what it was. And I basically just like tried to sit down and read it like I would normally read a book, where I just like keep on reading until I don't feel like reading anymore. But I think that with these books, what you need to do is read one story like per day. Like you don't want to sit down and read this all in one day, in my opinion, because each story is pretty similar in a way, because you have the same like setup every time of they come to the cafe, the people who work at the cafe explain how the time travel works, they travel back in time, and it is just a bit repetitive in a way, even though the situation is different. So yeah, I think that was my mistake reading the first one. So I didn't enjoy the first one as much as I enjoyed this one. I actually had the sequel a higher rating. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend this. I think that it's a really interesting concept and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, you do have to know going in that it's better to read it slowly, I think. The next one that I read was an audiobook, and I listened to the audiobook for With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book basically follows our main character, Amani, who I think is 16 or 17 years old, and she has a daughter. And she wants to be a chef and has this opportunity to go on a cooking course in Spain with her high school. So the book is really just kind of like about Amani's life, having a daughter as a teenager, kind of the trials that come with that, and you know, sort of the judgment that she gets at high school and stuff like that, and navigating like having a new relationship with someone who isn't the father. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading about a teen mom because I've never actually read about that before, I don't think. So it was something new for me to read about. You know, as always, Elizabeth Acevedo has such a good way of writing relationships, and just her writing in general is fantastic. I have to say, I think I prefer her novels in verse personally, but it could just be because this one, like, I feel like there was a lot of time spent with Amani in high school, and that is like not something that's super interesting to me anymore. It used to be when I was younger and still in high school. I really enjoyed reading about people who were in high school as well, but now that I'm a bit older, I just don't love it as much anymore. Like the day-to-day of going to high school, like just actually young adult contemporary in general is not my favorite thing anymore. But this was still really good. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I will say it has been my least favorite of her books that I've read so far. But yeah, I would still definitely recommend it, but I don't know. It just took me a really long time to get through it. But I think that's also because I was listening to the audiobook and I was busy and like not listening to audiobooks. So I don't know if it's actually the book's fault or just me, but anyway. It was still good. Next I reread 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. This book follows 3 sisters who are born on this island, and essentially they're the 3 queens, and when they turn 16 they have to fight to the death, and only one can remain and become the queen and rule the island, and then eventually she'll have triplets, and then her triplets will fight to the death when they're 16, and so on and so forth. Anyway, and the thing is that each triplet is supposed to have certain powers. So you have an elementalist, a poisoner, and a naturalist. And basically the elementalist, Mirabella, is like the strongest elementalist they've had in centuries. So everyone is like 100% positive that Mirabella is going to be the winner, but then things don't go to plan. And I actually really enjoyed this book. I think that this series is kind of underrated because I feel like a lot of people give up on it because it is very slow, and I think that there's a lot of like political or like court intrigue, not really court intrigue, more like political intrigue. There's a lot of scheming going on, more so in the later books actually. But I decided to reread this book because I read it like in 2018 I think, and I couldn't remember anything that happened, but I really wanted to read the sequel. So yeah, I reread it. I still really enjoyed it. It is quite a slow read, and I think that's why a lot of people give up on it, but if you can deal with a slow read, I would definitely recommend it. More so for like the autumn time because it is very like dark and atmospheric, but I would definitely recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I also might as well talk about the sequel, which I read in June actually, but I'll just talk about it now. So I also read One Dark Throne, which is the second book, and this was my first time reading it, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. These books are exciting. It's just a lot of the excitement happens later on in the book. There's like a lot of build up. So yeah, I thought that this one was really exciting, and I was really excited to see where the next one went. And I did actually start reading the third book last month, and I was reading it earlier this month as well, but I just decided to take a little break from it because, as I said, it is pretty slow and I just wanted something a little bit more exciting. But I do hope to go back to the third book at some point, maybe later this year, and finish that one and the fourth book because they're really, really good. Like, don't get me wrong, they're good, they're just slow, and I feel like you kind of have to work for it, which is obviously not something that you always want in a book. But I would recommend them if the plot sounds interesting to you and you know that you can deal with a book that is a little bit slower. Then I would recommend it. Next, I read a short story called The Terracotta Bride by Zen Cho, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't really remember what this one is about entirely, but it was kind of like set in hell, and it followed our main character who was married to a man in hell, and he also had another wife, and then there was a new wife who was the Terracotta Bride, and it was just sort of like navigating that and the main character's relationship with the two brides. I don't remember how long it was, but it was like a novella. It wasn't very long. I really enjoyed the writing style, but I wasn't like that big on the plot. I don't really remember what happened that much. Like, I don't think the plot was that well fleshed out, but I think if it had been a full-length novel, I think I really would have enjoyed it. And I'm excited to try out more stuff by Zen Cho. Then I randomly decided to pick up The Sun and Her Flowers by Ruby Kaur because I saw that my library had it and I hadn't read any poetry in ages. So I just randomly decided to pick it up, and I really just think that Ruby Kaur's poetry is just not for me. I didn't really enjoy Milk and Honey. I gave that one 2 stars, so I did enjoy this one a little bit more. I gave it 3 stars. I don't know if I said that already. I don't know what it is, but her poetry just like doesn't speak to me the way that a lot of other poetry does. I enjoyed the themes of this one more, but still her poems, I'm just like I'm not completely sold. This isn't me trying to hate on Ruby Kaur. I think that she's done a lot for the like modern poetry industry, I guess. But yeah, not my favorite. Next, I read Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is Chanel Miller's memoir about her experience being sexually assaulted and the case that followed. I don't normally rate nonfiction or memoirs because it feels weird to like rate someone's like life experience in a way, although really I am just rating like kind of the writing style more so than like the life experience, but whatever. I did decide to rate this one because I wanted to give her all the support always, so you know, wanted to make sure that she got a good rating on Goodreads. So yeah, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It was amazing, very harrowing. I cried a lot, but it's also like weirdly hopeful at times. Like the fact that she was able to come through this just a horrific thing that happened to her, and her writing was gorgeous. Like I want her to write some novels as well so that I can continue to read her stuff because it was amazing. I really enjoyed her writing style and learning more about her life. This is definitely a tough read, so do not read this if you don't think you're going to be able to, but I do think that everyone who can read this should read this because it was 10 out of 10 amazing. And there were just so many things that she talked about, like being catcalled and stuff like that by men all the time, and the way that society just treats women, it's upsetting. So this is definitely an upsetting book to read, but phenomenal. And obviously it was really upsetting reading about her experience, but yeah, really well written. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Please just pick up this book if you have the chance. And then the last book that I read in May was Accidentally Engaged by Farah Heron. Gave this a 4 stars. Well, I've written 4 stars down here, but I think I gave this a 4.5. I can't remember exactly, but it was either a 4 or 4.5. This story follows our 2 main characters whose names I cannot remember, but basically our main character, she really loves cooking and she's unfortunately just lost her job, but she gets this opportunity to enter a contest to get her own cooking show on like the Food Network basically. But the catch is it's only for people who are in relationships, and she ends up having to pretend to be engaged to her new next door neighbor who just so happens to be the guy who her parents want to set her up with for an arranged marriage. Anyway, so that's like the basic premise. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really fun. I thought I was going to be annoyed by it because the love interest had like a British accent, and I feel like a lot of romance books like to be like, oh my god, the love interest was so swoony, he had a British accent, and I'm like, as someone who lives in England, that is just not, that's not like a selling point for me. I'm just like, okay, I hear that every day. That's nothing new. So I always find that like, I'm almost like put off if the love interest is like supposed to be this swoony British heartthrob, but I wasn't in this case. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. Loved the cooking element and all the hijinks and the secrets. It was a fun time. I would definitely recommend it if you have the opportunity to pick it up. And I listened to the audiobook and I think that the audiobook was really good. Now on to the books that I've read in June. I obviously already spoke about One Dark Throne. So the next book that I read in June was The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I listened to the audiobook of this as well, which I got from my library. I actually like kept on putting this book on hold, and then it would finally come through and I just wouldn't be in the mood to read it. But I finally read it, and I'd seen some like mixed reviews of this one. Like, it doesn't have the best ratings on Goodreads. But I was like, I'm sure it's better than it sounds. But I honestly wasn't a massive fan. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So like, I didn't hate it. I did enjoy it, but it was just like definitely not my favorite thing because it's a little bit unrealistic. Well, a lot unrealistic actually. I mean, the smut scenes were just so cringy. But anyway, what this book is about. This book basically follows our main character. What's her name? Come on, Samantha, you can do this. No, I don't remember her name. Lena? Lena. I think her name was Lena. Okay. I think her name was Lena. Okay. It follows our main character, Lena, who is a wedding planner, who a couple of years ago actually stood up at her own wedding. Her fiance called it off at the last minute because the best man, who is also his brother, said something to him that convinced him that he didn't want to get married. So he called off the wedding, and Lena now hates the best man / brother because it's his fault that she didn't get married. Anyway, fast forward a few years, she is a wedding planner and she's trying to grow her business and work with a hotel and do the events and wedding planning for this hotel. But in order to do this, she has to work with Max. Max is the brother's name. She has to work with Max, and now they are working together, competing against the brother and the other person who's also competing to like get this spot as like the events planner for the hotel. That's not a very good explanation, but whatever. Anyway, so Max and Lena don't like each other. Well, Lena hates Max. Max is kind of like, I don't know what I did wrong. But as they work together, they sort of get feelings for each other, and yeah, they start to hook up, and then things unravel from there. Anyway, so I think that this book is kind of weird because it's like, I always find it a bit weird when it's like the love interest has already been with one of the siblings and then goes after the other one. Like, I don't know, it's just a weird dynamic because you just think like, how awkward would that be if they get married? Like, you know, I don't know. So it was a weird one. I didn't love the writing style. This one was awkward, but it was still a fun time. I gave it 3 stars. I wouldn't reread it. I wouldn't highly recommend it, but if it sounds like something that would be fun to you, check it out. The next book I read was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. If you're new here and you don't know, or if you just don't know, The Martian, which is also by Andy Weir, is my favorite book of all time. I love it. I actually really want to do a reread of it really soon, but I've read it 3 times. I've loved it every time. In fact, I think I love it more every time. It's just hilarious, hopeful, amazing, show-stopping, wonderful. And the movie is top tier, like one of the best book to movie adaptations in existence. So I was really highly anticipating this one. I actually ordered it. I do have it. It's just downstairs. I couldn't be bothered to get it. But yes, I own it because I was like, I have to have it. And I have barely bought any books this year. So yeah, but I was like, I need this one. So this book follows our main character. Oh my God. Why am I the worst with character names? Rylan. Rylan? Yes. This book follows our main character, Rylan Grace, who has essentially woken up on this spaceship and he is alone. Well, actually, there are 2 dead bodies near him. His crewmates have died. So he wakes up on the spaceship alone. He doesn't remember why he's there, but he slowly starts to remember things and realizes that he is there because there is essentially this sort of like alien substance that is stealing the energy from the sun. So the Earth is dying because the Earth is not getting enough energy to grow things, and you know, it's a big disaster. It's like climate change, but different because it's getting, well, I mean, all climate change is change, but you know, instead of like warming, which is what we're experiencing right now, it's cooling down, and there's going to be another ice age immediately, like within like less than a century. So Rylan is tasked with finding a solution to this alien substance which is stealing the energy from the sun. So he is off in space doing some science to try and figure out a solution, and he's completely alone. Or is he? That's what the inside flap says. I don't want to say anything more than that, but this book was not my favorite Andy Weir book, obviously, because that still belongs to The Martian. I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars because it was really fun for the most part. But yeah, it did have like the typical Andy Weir like formula of humor, science, and adventure. So that's kind of what you can expect in any Andy Weir book, I think, and also sort of like a commentary on like the world and like kind of collaboration. I think that that's kind of like what you get in an Andy Weir book. And this had all of those elements. It was funny, not as funny as The Martian in my opinion. It had a lot of science, and actually that was kind of one of the reasons I didn't love it as much as The Martian, was because there was so much science that sometimes I was just like, I really just don't know what's going on. But I mean, I still enjoy learning about it, so you know, it was still good, but it was a bit too much for my liking. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a fun time, but I think it was just a little bit too sciencey for my language brain. My brain is geared towards languages, not sciences. So the next book that I read in June was The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is a novel told in verse, which is basically chronicling the life of our main character. His name I can't remember. It's basically chronicling his life from I think the age of like 7 until he goes to university, where he discovers the drag scene and learns more about that. And it's him like learning about his sexuality, understanding it, dealing with being a gay teen in London and also being mixed race and what that means for him. So a lot of focus is on identity, and it was really good. I do enjoy a novel told in verse. They just read so quickly, and I feel like you have to be quite skilled to be able to, you know, get the same sort of feelings across in fewer words. But yeah, it was really good. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The reason I didn't rate it higher was because I was expecting the drag to be more of an element. It really wasn't in it that much. I almost feel like we spent too much time on his youth rather than the time at university, which I thought was going to be the main focus, even though I think there was actually more time spent on the university section, like page-wise, but it just didn't feel like it was fleshed out as much as the stuff that happened in his childhood. That's just how I felt about it, but I still really enjoyed it. 3.5 is a good rating, so yes. The next book that I read was Loveless by Alice Oseman. I finally read this. I was actually going to read this last year, and then I just didn't get around to it, but I finally did. This book follows our main character. What is wrong with me? Why can I not remember a single character's name? This book follows our main character. I need to look this up because Georgia, her name's Georgia. This book follows our main character, Georgia, who is just about to go off to university, and she's feeling kind of lost because she's never been in a relationship, never been in love, she's never even been kissed before, and she's just kind of confused because she's like this hopeless romantic and she really wants to have that experience, but she just hasn't yet. But when she's at university, she starts to learn some new terms like aromantic and asexual, and kind of starts to think more about her own sexuality. And also she happens to go to the same university as her 2 best friends from high school, and so because of things that she's learning about herself, their relationships start to get a little bit tense. It's about her and her friends, their friendships, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed Alice Oseman's writing style. This book was just like such a quick read. I think I read it, I don't know how many days it took me to read it, but I read it pretty quickly, and every time I picked it up I felt like I was flying through it, and I just didn't want to put it down, even though it's not like action packed or anything. I just really enjoyed learning about the characters. I feel like I cared for them a lot, which, as I've already said in this video, characters are like the main important thing for me in a book. So yeah, the fact that I cared a lot about these characters means that I really enjoyed it, and I wanted them to just be like happy and getting along. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Liked reading about people who are in university because obviously I just finished university. So anyway, the next book that I read is also one by Alice Oseman. I finally read Heartstopper Volume 1, which is the first volume of her graphic novel series following Nick and Charlie, who are 2 boys who meet in high school, and they're in different years, but they end up in the same tutor group, and so they meet and a friendship forms between them, and then eventually they're like, oh, maybe this is more than a friendship. But Charlie is out but Nick isn't, and so it's sort of just like following their relationship. And this is honestly, I know everyone says that this is like so cute, so fun, so fluffy, and it genuinely is. Like, this is just like instant happiness. Just read it and be happy. Like, so much fun, so cute. The drawings, immaculate. I love it so much. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars because it's not like a new favorite thing that I like love with all of my heart, but I did really enjoy my time reading it, and I have actually read the 2nd volume, which I read in July, so I'll talk about it in next month's wrap up, or this month's wrap up, I guess. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to be reading volume 3 and 4 when I can, and volume 5 when it comes out. I'm sorry to join the Heartstopper hype train, but it's just so fun. Anyway, we're finally on to my last book. Thank God, because my voice hurts and I am so warm. The last book I read in June was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is another book that I actually bought. It's downstairs, but I do own it because I was just like so excited to read it. I just needed to own it. But if you somehow do not know what this book's about, this is the 3rd book in the Brown Sisters trilogy. but they're not really like, you don't have to read them in order at all because they're kind of just like companion books, but they each follow one of the Brown sisters, obviously, and it basically follows Eve Brown, who's had like so many different jobs and she doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, and her family has kind of had enough of her because they're like, you're ridiculous, you don't stick anything out and you're just like all over the place. And she ends up stumbling into this bread and breakfast, which she needs a chef. The owner of the B&B is this like grumpy guy who is not interested in any of her sort of erratic behavior, but he is in desperate need of a chef, especially because she hits him with her car. So he really needs a chef. He ends up hiring her, and so they kind of like, they kind of hate each other in the beginning, but obviously this is a romance. So romance ensues, and it was so fun, so cute. This is definitely my favorite one of the trilogy. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave Take a Hint, Danny Brown 4 stars, and I gave, what's the first one called? Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I gave that one 3.5 stars. So yeah, this was 100% my favorite one. So fun, so cute. Loved it. So those were all the books that I read in May and June. I've been talking for such a long time. I have so much footage, so this is gonna be such a fun time to edit. And I was gonna film more videos, but I'm actually too hot, so I'm not gonna film any more videos. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below. Please let me know what books you've read and enjoyed recently. I think I'm finally out of my thing where all of the books I read I just felt very average about. I'm actually enjoying books again, so that's good. I've had so many 3 stars this year that I'm ready for those 4.5 and 5-star reads. I need them in my life, and I think this summer I'm manifesting it for myself. Only really good reads. Actually, I've already had a 3-star in July, but that's fine. We're forgetting about that for now. Only good reads. But yeah, that's all I have for this video, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, please leave me like a yellow flower emoji in honor of this really cute shirt. But I'm gonna go, and I will hopefully have another video for you very soon. I'll see you whenever that is. But yeah, I'm gonna go. Bye!